Good morning, friends, and welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church of Orlando, the congregation we know as 1U. If you are new among us, we want to give you an especially warm welcome. We're glad that you're able to join us this morning in this worship experience. We bring a teaching of hope and healing to the world. We welcome all in our doors, any and all who are searching, seeking, looking for more meaning, more service, more truth, more love. Whatever your place in your own journey, you are welcome. Atheists and Christians, Muslims and Jews, those of many faiths, those of no particular faith, seekers and searchers for truth. Whatever your place in the world, you are welcome. Straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. We invite all of you to journey with us on this adventure of faith. To find out more about Unitarian Universalism in our congregation, go to our website, orlandouu.org. Again, welcome. Today after worship, we hope all can join us for our informal fellowship. Bring a cup of your favorite coffee. That would be the coffee that you make at home this morning or wherever you are. That is in a separate meeting with a separate Zoom link that is on our website, and you were also sent it in the Friday e-blast email. It also requires a password that is only in that Friday email. It's the same password we use for every fellowship event. If you are new among us, we hope you come back next week for worship. Following that worship service, we will have a special Q&A with the minister as well as our membership team. If you have any questions about Unitarian Universalism, about this congregation, just want to find out more about us, you're welcome into that conversation. We'll send a link out this week on our list, and if you are brand new among us, just email members@orlandouu.org. The email is there in the notes right now, and we will be glad to send you a link. And now here's some exciting news about our Ministerial Search Committee.
Good morning. My name is Mary DuBois, and I'm serving as your president for the Board of Trustees for this coming year. This morning I'm here to share the names of our brand new Ministerial Search Committee. They are in alphabetical order: Craig Alec, Rose Byler, Greg Buckingham, Marty Haney, Elizabeth Horn, Allison McMillan, and Sandy Pollock. I want to say thank you to everyone who was involved in this process along the way. We had almost 100 people making nominations. We had 15 people who graciously agreed to serve on the slate of nominees. And we had 140 people voting in conjunction with our last annual meeting. Thank you very much for your involvement. Well, we look forward to this next year as we support the Ministerial Search Committee in their very important task of helping us find that next settled minister.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to all on our new Ministerial Search Committee. That work is indeed holy work, and we bless you on your journey this next year. To make an offering to the ministries of this church, go to the website, orlandouu.org, and in the upper right of the screen, you'll see the donate button. Just click it, and it'll give you all the information you need. Or you may send a text to the number in the notes to give us your pledge, or send a check to the church. And now, let's gather in worship with song. Aubrey.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within. has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Thank you, Aubrey. Indeed, love is guiding us through these times. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice as we get ready for worship to set aside this time as sacred time away from the clatter of the world. So if you will join with me in our familiar words. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. This is the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day, of course, is the time where we as a nation honor those who died while actively on duty with the armed forces. We are indeed surrounded by a cloud of witnesses of those who died in service to their country. We honor that service. We also honor those currently serving, and if deployed outside our borders, we hope and pray for their safe return. And we also honor those suffering from the previous experience of combat and the toll it can take on the human heart and body. To all, thank you for your service. As a community, each week in worship, we set aside time to hear the joys and the concerns of the community. This week, Nicole, Michael, and Maya are thrilled to report that their new baby Jade has come home. They are doing well. Maya is happy to be a big sister. We also honor Bob and Janice, who celebrate 51 years of marriage today. Congratulations, Bob and Janice. Jeannie reports that she has adopted her current foster pug puppy, Molly. She says after fostering 96 pugs for Pug Rescue of Florida, she just couldn't let go of Molly after 2 months of sheltering in place with Molly. Of course, we remember all those who were ill with the coronavirus and their families, all those who are suffering in any manner of health or unemployment or financial distress or loneliness in these challenging days. And of course, we commemorate the unspoken cares among us. But we know that the light of the sacred shines into the dark and broken places of our lives. To prepare ourselves for meditation and prayer, as always, let's take a deep breath together. Knowing that as we share the air, so we share this earth, and we share the very life of life together. And now, let's open our hearts in song. Aubrey.
Come, soul of all things, make it mine to feel amid the city's jar that there abides a peace of thine I did not make and cannot mar. The will to neither strive nor cry, the power to feel with others give. Come, come the morn, nor let me die before I have begun to live.
As we prepare for prayer and meditation, if there are those you want to remember, honor, or pray for, you're invited to name them during the silence in the communion of names. use either the Facebook comment section or the Zoom notes section. With the Zoom, please make sure that your notes go to all participants, not just to the panelists, that is our worship team this morning, unless that is your intention. Our prayer this morning is from the Reverend Sarah LaWall. With open hearts, we hear the prayer, followed by silence. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we are called together by love, a love deep enough to hold our joys and sorrows, our pain and loss, our doubts and fears. A love strong enough to steady us in the thresholds of life, awaiting the next blessing. May we find the courage to persevere in the storm, to see the holy and the broken, to stay present to life. When the pull to disappear takes hold with all its harsh realities, may we conjure up that fierce love to bring our hopeful vision into being, discovering the humanity, bravery, goodness, still calling us forth. May we breathe into that story and make it come alive. May we be vessels of comfort and compassion. May we be vessels of peace and justice. May we be vessels of hope and healing. And may love prevail. And now, with the silent meditations of our hearts, we enter the silence and the communion of names. And so it is. Amen. Blessed be.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Gray, and I am the religious educator here at First Unitarian Church of Orlando. And today, as we talk about how the faith traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism came together in a nature of inclusiveness, we're going to be reading a story about inclusiveness called The Big Umbrella. The Big Umbrella by Amy June Bates. By the front door, there is an umbrella. It is big. It is a big, friendly umbrella. It likes to help. It likes to spread its arms wide. It loves to give shelter. It loves to gather people in. It doesn't matter if you are tall or hairy or plaid. It doesn't matter how many legs you have. Some people worry that there won't be enough room under the big umbrella. But the amazing thing is, there's always room.
This is my song, O God of all.
Thank you, Aubrey and choir. How wonderful to see the choir together again. I know that wasn't easy to do. Thank you. 60 years ago yesterday, on May 23rd, 1960, in John Hancock Hall in Boston, representatives from the Unitarians and representatives from the Universalists met together in separate rooms to decide among themselves should the two liberal religious traditions consolidate as one and go forward or not. At the end of the meeting, there was a strong recommendation to indeed consolidate into one faith. The following year, in May of 1961, the consolidation was made legal at the first annual meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston upon the approval of the association's constitution and bylaws. Through those heady days, there were some who saw the merger of Unitarians and Universalists to consolidate a new world faith that would be the great liberal religious tradition of America and of the world. And in some ways was born a new faith, Unitarian Universalism, and perhaps more accurately, a continuation of two historic traditions that had now consolidated into one stream going forward. For those new among us, a quick history note of what the two groups were like. In America, the Unitarians came from the liberal Congregationalists and split off in the early 19th century. They had come to a Unitarian theology, not Trinitarian, thus the name, that Jesus, while holy, was not God itself. And the Universalist, likewise, liberal Christian tradition, had a heretical distinction that they believed in universal salvation. That is, that God loves everyone so much that nobody is going to hell. And that kept them separate from traditional Christians of that era. So both traditions shared that experience of being somewhat on the edge of Christianity, and that naturally helped to draw them together. And in later generations, both groups became more broad in outlook, seeking wisdom from beyond their native Christianity to other world religions and other philosophies and ways of being, each following the dictates of their strong ideas that revelation was not sealed. Those hopes in the early 1960s that a new world faith was being born has not exactly borne out well. Since then, though some individual congregations have thrived and grown, as an association of churches, we're pretty much the same size as we were back then, maybe a little larger. So what's missing? What happened? Over the past 2 months, the coronavirus, of course, has changed us, it seems, overnight from being a in-person church to an online church. It's forced us to do many things differently in society, of course. And in church life, it's really given us some stresses and also some opportunities. There are likely many other changes that the church will have to make in a coronavirus generation. So says Tony Morgan, a church pastor, consultant, and writer. Tony comes from the evangelical megachurch community. In his website, he drafted a new article called 7 Shifts Churches Need to Make Because of the Coronavirus, and there's a link to this online article in the notes for this video. A couple of the shifts he suggests that churches need to go from analog to digital. That's obvious enough, as churches have been forced to go to online worship like this. He says churches need to go from gathering to connecting. And I think he means not merely just getting together and feeling good being a community, but really connecting at a deep level with each other and with the wider world. A shift from complexity to simplicity. This one challenged me because we know as a church grows, it naturally needs to be more complex in the way it's organized. And he says that may be true, but there still has to be a simplicity about what the church does. And he says the church needs to go from counting attendees, now viewers, to engagement. I think not being so concerned with just the numbers. And there are several other similar shifts he recommends, all having to do with getting down more to the mission, to the why, to the gospel of being church. Now, he defines gospel, of course, from his prism of being a pastor in the evangelical megachurch community. And that has caused me to think, well, what is our gospel? What is the gospel of Unitarian Universalism? Now, certainly our gospel might not be as easy to encapsulate, but I think it's worth a try. What is the core of our faith? Why do we do church? Not just how, which is where we usually spend most of our energy, but why? Why be church in this era? One church I served several years ago had the best mission statement I have ever seen in a church I've served or any church that I know of. It's also the shortest mission statement, 5 words. It is changing lives and healing our world. According to this congregation, that's their mission statement, changing lives and healing our world. And throughout my ministry with them, when we would sit down to plan things, it was common for lay leaders to ask, well, if we start this project, how does it help us change lives or heal our world? And it was just amazing how this idea had just permeated that whole congregation. Now, the things they did were not a whole lot different from what other churches do. They didn't do anything necessarily distinctive, but they were more clear on the focus, the mission, the why, maybe the gospel of being church. Now, of all the shifts that Tony Morgan makes on how churches ought to be doing things differently in the coronavirus era, I have one more. And this one is especially for Unitarian Universalists. Now, I have to use a word we don't like to use. So if your kids are close to the screen, you might want to get them engaged a little bit. I don't want to warp their innocent minds. And I know I'm stepping outside Unitarian Universalist orthodoxy with this, but I think it's important. I think we need to make an 8th shift in this era, what could be termed from institutionalizing to evangelizing. The E word, evangelism. Now, I'm not saying we need to forget the tools of institutionalizing. Of course, buildings and bylaws are important. My own calling as a transition minister is really focused on organizational development of churches. That's what fires my spirit, organizational development. Dealing with the basics of institutionalization, raising money, proper staffing, good governance, healthy process, and so forth. Those are important tools that we have, but it doesn't explain the why of being church. I think Unitarian Universalism has a life-saving message, that we have a way of living with each other and in the world, that we have practices that connect us both to authentic lived human experience and to the sacred realm of experience. And it's the second avenue that we haven't done so well in, I think, that we have to attend to both areas of living across the various theologies that we have individually. I'm not asking anybody to change their theology, just to open their awareness to the need for a balance between sacred and living as humans. And I think now, in this time of the coronavirus, now is the time for this. There are people out there hurting in ways who have not hurt before. This whole experience of sheltering, of distancing, it just goes against our grain as human beings who are built for relationality. And here in the church and in other organizations, I'm sure, we are discovering new ways of connecting even in this era. And we are reaching people who we have not reached before. There are people in this worship service this morning who have never been on our campus. There are people in this worship service this morning who I'll bet haven't even heard of Unitarian Universalism until recently. I got a call this last week. This is true. I am not making this up. I didn't get this out of a sermon illustration book. I picked up the phone in my office. It was this gentleman calling me, and he began he introduced himself to me. I didn't know him. And he said that he wanted to talk about the idea of hell. And I thought, oh no, here we go. And turns out he is bothered by that doctrine. He's been going to churches that sounded like of a more conservative variety, and he's just bothered by this whole concept of people going to hell who don't believe a certain way. And he said, I think hell is a metaphor, and what the hell we're talking about is the hell we create for ourselves and the way we live. Well, yeah, I had to agree with him totally. Told him a little bit of the history of universalism that had to do with that doctrine of hell. And he's interested in finding out more about us. And this is just a random caller. And I know there are people out there who would be thrilled to find a place like this, and they just don't know that we exist. And we've got to do a better message of taking our message out. And I don't want to get too involved right now in the how of that already. I know some of you are thinking of, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And those are all good tools. But what we've got to do mainly is to reorient our whole focus on a gospel of Unitarian Universalism and become comfortable with taking that gospel out to the world. I use the word evangelization. There are probably other words, but that is the religious word that most people would use. And in fact, we do have evangelism in our DNA, and we don't ever talk about this, but the old Universalists of the 18th and 19th century, in America, they followed the Western expansion of the nation, and they were evangelical like the Methodists of the day. They even had circuit riders who would go out on horseback from town to town to tell people the good news that God loves everyone. Well, in this ethic that God loves everyone, and that therefore we should be mindful of how we treat everyone, developed in the 20th century to a more global perspective of a universalism that dealt with the different ways that people understood and lived. They understood that in other lands, to quote the anthem, in other lands, other hearts are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. So as we move forward through these days of the pandemic, friends, as we simplify this idea of how we are church together and why we are church together, as you prepare in the next year, as your search committee goes to work looking for the perfect candidate for ministry, and as you call that person into your ministry this next spring of 2021, and that person arrives probably in August of 2021, who will work with you to pastor to a new generation of searchers and seekers, do so with an evangelical understanding of why we must love the world and help to save the world, and as sometimes said among us, love the hell right out of the world. Indeed, in our understanding, church is a big umbrella. We love to give shelter. We love to gather all kinds of people in, and there is always room. There is always room. May there be room in your hearts and in mine and in ours in these days for the living and the loving of these days. So may it be. Amen. Our final hymn that Aubrey will perform in just a moment was first published in a 1937 hymnal that was developed both by the Unitarians and the Universalists with an eye to later consolidation. And this particular song was written to celebrate the growing closeness between the two traditions and was actually sung at the 1961 worship service that celebrated the union. So let us celebrate that union again today, the two tributaries of our beloved Unitarian Universalist faith. Let us sing.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless creed, free from a social code that fails to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic Church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
Thank you, Aubrey. And now, as we prepare to close the worship service, we extinguish the chalice. In the familiar words, we extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My friends, remember, we haven't just been to church, we are the church. And when the church is the church, it is nothing more, it is nothing less, it is nothing other than a place of hope and healing, a big umbrella for the world, a place where there is always room for more love, more compassion, more truth, and more justice. Go this week through these days and be the church. Go in grace. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.